The night Amara Kingsley was supposed to feel the safest, wrapped in lace, laughter, and vows, she instead stood frozen behind a hibiscus hedge, her wedding heels sinking into damp soil, as the voices of the two people she loved most sliced through the dark like knives. A kiss, a laugh, and words that would shatter her life forever. Before we dive into this story of loyalty, betrayal, and carefully planned revenge, do me a favor, like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling us what part of the world you're watching from if you love deep, dramatic African tales like this one. Now, let's go back to where it all began. Amara Kingsley and Lena Brooks met on the first day of senior year at Crown Ridge High School, an elite private school perched on the quieter edge of Lagos Island. Amara arrived that morning in her father's black SUV, driver opening the door, sunlight glinting off her gold wristwatch. Lena arrived sweaty and breathless, clutching a second-hand backpack, having jogged the last stretch because the bus fare had gone up again. They could not have come from more different worlds. Amara was the only daughter of Charles Kingsley, a titan in West Africa's construction industry. Her life had been carefully paved: international schools, piano lessons, summer programs abroad, and the unspoken certainty that she would inherit not just wealth, but influence. Lena, on the other hand, was raised by a single mother in a cramped two-bedroom flat in Mushin. Her childhood was a rhythm of scarcity, choosing which meal to skip, studying by candlelight during blackouts, and learning early that pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. Their friendship began with something small. Lena's pen ran out during a math test. Panic crept up her spine as she stared at the paper. Without a word, Amara slid her own pen across the desk, met Lena's eyes, and smiled. Easy, warm, without pity. That smile changed everything. From that day on, they were inseparable. Amara never made Lena feel like a charity case. She didn't flaunt her wealth or talk down to her. Instead, she quietly filled the gaps, slipping Lena lunch money when she claimed the cafeteria food was too oily, inviting her to study sessions that always ended with food and laughter, insisting they share clothes for school events so Lena never felt out of place. When university admission letters came, both girls got into the same prestigious private university. Amara, through legacy connections and stellar grades. Lena, through sheer brilliance and scholarships she'd fought tooth and nail for. They shared a dorm room, then an off-campus apartment. They graduated together, caps in the air, arms locked, shouting promises about conquering the world side by side. Amara's father paid the rent on their first real apartment without Lena ever asking. Amara helped Lena's mother get better medical care. Lena, in return, became Amara's shadow, defender, confidant, the sister Amara never had. Or so Amara believed. What Amara didn't know was that while she was building a life of trust and shared dreams, Lena was nursing a quiet, dangerous hunger, fear of falling back into poverty, terror of losing the fragile comfort she'd tasted, and a growing resentment she refused to name. She loved Amara, but she also envied her. And envy, when fed by desperation, can rot into something monstrous. Lena met Ethan Moore at a rooftop bar in Accra during a short work trip after graduation. He was charming in a way that felt deliberate. Well-tailored suits, foreign accents softened by humor, stories of consulting projects and international clients. He spoke about money as if it were water, something that flowed endlessly, something he could always access. To Lena, he felt like escape. Ethan listened to her stories about growing up poor, about scraping by on scholarships, about always feeling one bad month away from disaster. He told her she was brilliant, underestimated, destined for more. He made her feel chosen. What Lena didn't see, or chose not to see, was that Ethan's wealth didn't come from clean hands. Ethan was a professional fraudster, operating between Ghana and Nigeria. He specialized in elaborate online scams, fake investment platforms, forged real estate deals, identity theft wrapped in polished presentations. For years, he had lived ahead of consequences, always one step ahead of the law, until one scheme collapsed spectacularly. A group of investors demanded answers. Money vanished. Threats followed, calls in the night, messages that hinted at violence. men who did not bluff. Ethan's world began to close in. He told Lena everything one humid night, voice shaking for the first time since she'd known him. He owed a staggering amount of money. He had burned powerful people, and if he didn't repay them soon, there would be consequences far worse than prison. Lena was terrified, not just for Ethan, but for herself. By then, she was deeply entangled. Emotionally, financially, he had used her accounts to move funds. She had signed documents she didn't fully understand. Loving him had already made her complicit. She knew one thing with painful clarity. Amara could never know. Amara would see through Ethan instantly. Amara would call him what he was. Amara would walk away, and Lena would lose everything. So Lena did what she had always done best. She lied. She told Amara she was focusing on her career. She hid her calls, deleted messages, flew out for conferences. She lived two lives, one as Amara's loyal sister, the other as Ethan's desperate lifeline. When Ethan's situation became dire, desperation tipped into calculation. Lena began to think in cold, terrifying terms. Amara had access. Amara had trust. Amara had a father whose empire touched contracts, banks, and powerful men. And Amara was kind. Too kind. The idea didn't arrive fully formed. It crept in slowly, disguised as necessity, as survival, as love. What if Amara met Ethan properly? What if she saw him the way Lena wanted her to see him? What if one connection led to another and another until the debt disappeared? Lena convinced herself it wasn't betrayal. It was borrowing. It was temporary. It was the only way. And so, somewhere between fear and greed, Lena made a choice that would set everything in motion. A choice that would cost her a sister, a future, and the one thing she thought she was protecting. But for now, she smiled at Amara across their shared kitchen table, raised her glass, and toasted to friendship, while hiding a secret powerful enough to destroy them both. Lena did not rush the plan. If there was one thing poverty had taught her, it was patience, how to wait, how to observe, how to move only when the ground beneath her felt solid. She knew Amara too well to force anything. Amara distrusted pressure. She resisted anything that smelled like manipulation. If this was going to work, it had to feel organic, effortless, fate-like. So Lena began with stories. Small ones at first. She casually mentioned a friend she met during her Accra trip, an architect who specialized in sustainable housing across West Africa. She spoke about him with just enough admiration to sound impressed, but not enough to sound invested. Amara listened, nodding politely, half distracted as she skimmed through emails from her father's company. Weeks later, Lena mentioned him again, this time with humor. A joke about how this Ethan guy had corrected a contractor during a site visit and saved a project millions. Amara raised an eyebrow, mildly interested. Sounds like someone Dad would like, she said absently. Lena stored that sentence away like a loaded weapon. Ethan, meanwhile, was being carefully reshaped. Lena coached him relentlessly. What to say, what not to say, how to dress, how to soften his accent without erasing it. She drilled him on the basics of architecture, sent him articles, made him memorize project terminology. She helped him build a clean digital footprint. LinkedIn profile, polished portfolio, carefully curated online presence that scrubbed away his past and replaced it with legitimacy. Ethan complained at first. "This is too much work," he scoffed during one late-night call. "Why not just ask her father for an investment directly?" Lena snapped back, voice sharp with fear. "Because Amara isn't stupid. She won't introduce a stranger into her father's world unless she trusts him with her life." And that, Lena knew, was the real prize. Trust. The first chance meeting happened at a charity art exhibition Amara was sponsoring through her foundation. Lena made sure Ethan volunteered to help coordinate logistics. She pretended to be surprised when she saw him there. "Oh my God, Ethan!" Lena exclaimed loudly, pulling him into a hug just as Amara approached. Amara noticed everything. The confident posture, the easy smile, the way he spoke, measured, thoughtful, not flashy. When Lena introduced them, Ethan shook Amara's hand with respectful restraint, complimented the exhibition without flattery, and asked intelligent questions about the Foundation's work in underserved communities. No red flags. Over the next few weeks, Lena kept placing Ethan in Amara's orbit. Group dinners, casual lunches, professional overlaps that felt coincidental but were anything but. Ethan never pushed. He let Amara come to him, laughing at her jokes, challenging her opinions gently, listening more than he spoke. Amara found herself intrigued despite herself. He was different from the men she usually met, less arrogant, more grounded. He didn't seem impressed by her wealth, which made her relax around him. When she spoke about the pressure of being Charles Kingsley's daughter, Ethan listened without trying to fix anything. Lena watched it all unfold with a tight smile and a knot in her stomach. Each laugh Amara shared with Ethan twisted something inside her. Guilt surfaced occasionally, sharp and unwelcome, but Lena drowned it with logic. This will save us. This will be quick. Amara will never truly lose anything. By the time Ethan asked Amara out for coffee, Lena had already mapped the next 6 months in her head. And Amara said yes. As Amara and Ethan began dating, Lena perfected her performance. She became the supportive best friend, the one who squealed when Amara mentioned date plans, who offered outfit suggestions, who listened patiently as Amara analyzed Ethan's silences and smiles. She asked the right questions. She gave balanced advice. Take it slow, she'd say gently. You deserve someone solid. Every word was calculated. Behind the scenes, Lena and Ethan were communicating constantly. Encrypted messages, late-night calls, detailed breakdowns of Amara's habits, her emotional triggers, her values. Lena told Ethan when to pull back and when to lean in, when to be vulnerable, when to appear strong. She hates feeling rushed, Lena warned him once. If you talk about commitment too early, she'll retreat. Ethan listened, adapted, learned. Their real conversations were nothing like the ones he had with Amara. With Lena, he spoke bluntly about money, about timelines, about how long it would take to gain access to Charles Kingsley's inner circle. She trusts you completely, Ethan said one night. That's our leverage. Lena swallowed hard. Don't say it like that. But even as she objected, she kept feeding him information. She told him about Amara's favorite childhood memories, about the way she softened when she spoke of family, about how deeply she valued loyalty. She knew Ethan needed these details to mirror sincerity, and she gave them freely. Amara, unaware of the duplicity unfolding inches from her life, fell steadily deeper. Ethan was attentive without being possessive, ambitious without being intimidating. He spoke respectfully about her father's empire, asked intelligent questions about construction ethics, sustainability, and long-term urban planning. When he finally met Charles Kingsley at a dinner Lena orchestrated under the guise of celebration, he impressed him effortlessly. Charles liked men who listened, and Ethan listened very well. Soon, Ethan began attending informal meetings. Nothing official, just observations, he called them. He spoke about ideas that aligned perfectly with the company's future goals, ideas Lena had quietly lifted from Amara's conversations at home. Each small success tightened the noose. Amara began to see a future. Marriage didn't scare her the way it once had. Ethan fit into her world so seamlessly that she assumed it was destiny, not design. Lena watched her best friend glow and felt something crack inside her chest. There were moments, brief, treacherous moments, when Lena considered stopping everything, telling the truth, accepting the consequences. But then Ethan would remind her of the debts, of the threats, of the men who didn't forgive failure. This is bigger than feelings, he said coldly during one argument. We're already in too deep. And Lena believed him. So she smiled at Amara across brunch tables. She toasted a love. She stood beside her during fittings and celebrations, swallowing guilt like poison and calling it courage. What Amara didn't know was that every affectionate glance between her and Ethan was being mirrored elsewhere, calculated, discussed, and repurposed. Love, to Ethan, was a tool. Friendship, to Lena, had become collateral. And as the relationship deepened, the line between pretending and reality began to blur in dangerous ways. Ways that would soon demand a price none of them were truly ready to pay. The game was in motion now, and no one could stop it. The wedding had been perfect. Too perfect. The kind of night people would talk about for years. The fairy lights draped like constellations across the courtyard. The live band blending soft highlife with classical strings. The air scented with jasmine and champagne. Amara moved through it all like someone inside a dream, smiling until her cheeks hurt, accepting congratulations, laughter, blessings. She was finally Mrs. Moore. But perfection is exhausting. By the time the third round of speeches ended and the crowd swelled tighter around her, Amara felt a sudden, suffocating pressure in her chest. The music grew too loud, the laughter too sharp, the heat unbearable beneath layers of silk and lace. "I need air," she whispered to no one in particular. She slipped away quietly, heels in hand, following a stone path that curved toward the back garden of the estate. This part of the property was older, less manicured. Hibiscus bushes, tall palms, shadows thick with memory. It had always been her refuge as a child. The night breeze cooled her skin. She inhaled deeply, eyes closing as she leaned against a marble balustrade. For a moment, she let herself feel it, the relief, the finality, the belief that she had chosen well. Then she heard laughter. Soft, intimate, too familiar. Amara frowned and followed the sound instinctively, stepping carefully between the bushes. The voices grew clearer with every step. Ethan's voice, and Lena's. Amara slowed, confusion knitting her brows. Maybe they were looking for her. Maybe. She stopped. Through a break in the leaves, she saw them. Lena's back was pressed against the trunk of a palm tree. Ethan stood close, too close. His hand was on her waist, fingers gripping fabric like he had every right to be there. Lena's head tilted back, her laughter dissolving into a whisper. Then he kissed her. Not a quick, accidental peck. A deep practice kiss. The kind born of familiarity, not temptation. Amara's world tilted. Her breath caught in her throat, but her body refused to move. She felt rooted to the earth, veins humming with disbelief, so sharp it felt like pain. They pulled apart slightly, foreheads touching. "Now it's done," Lena murmured, voice low. "We just have to be careful." Ethan scoffed. "Careful? Please. She's in love. This marriage is a transaction, Lena. Nothing more. Transaction." The word landed like a gunshot. "She'll never suspect," Ethan continued. "Once I'm officially part of her life, access gets easier. Her father's company, the accounts, everything opens up." "And the money?" Lena asked. "I clear my debts. We reset." That was the deal. Amara's knees nearly buckled. So this was it. Not a mistake. Not a moment of weakness. A plan. A long, carefully executed betrayal involving the man she married and the woman she called her sister. Lena laughed softly. "I told you she'd be easy." Amara trusts too deeply. Something inside Amara went cold. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't run. Instead, her hand moved slowly to her phone. Amara's fingers trembled as she unlocked her screen, but her face remained eerily calm. Years of being Charles Kingsley's daughter had taught her how to mask chaos with composure, how to listen without reacting, how to gather information before making a move. She angled the phone slightly through the leaves and pressed record. The red dot appeared. Ethan and Lena continued talking, unaware that their voices, so smug, so careless, were being preserved forever. "You played your part well," Ethan said. "Best friend, sister, savior." She never saw it coming. Lena's voice wavered for half a second. "Don't underestimate her. Amara's not stupid." Ethan chuckled. "She's kind. That's worse." Amara felt something inside her chest crack open, not loudly but completely. A clean break. A severing. She recorded everything. The kisses. The laughter. The admission of fraud. The confirmation that her marriage was nothing more than a gateway to her family's empire. When the conversation finally lulled, Amara stepped back slowly, retreating the same way she'd come. She moved on instinct alone, every sense sharpened, heart pounding so hard she was certain they could hear it. Back inside the reception hall, the music swelled. No one noticed her slip into the powder room and lock the door. She sat on the edge of the marble sink, staring at her reflection. The woman looking back at her was unrecognizable. Her eyes were darker, older, stripped of illusion. Amara did not cry. Not then. She saved the recording to multiple locations, cloud storage, a hidden folder, an email draft she never sent. She named the file simply, Truth. When she emerged, her smile was flawless. She returned to the crowd. She danced. She laughed. She posed for photographs beside Ethan, whose hand rested on her waist like a claim he had no idea was already revoked. Lena hugged her tightly at one point. "You look so happy," Lena whispered. Amara smiled into her shoulder. "I am." And in that moment, it was true, because devastation had given her clarity. This wasn't a drunken kiss or a confused overlap of emotions. This was strategy, planning, exploitation. They had studied her, used her love as leverage, targeted her family's legacy with surgical precision, which meant this wasn't a heartbreak to mourn. It was a war to win. That night, as Ethan slept beside her, peaceful, satisfied, unaware, Amara lay awake staring at the ceiling. She replayed every moment of the past year with new eyes. Every coincidence, every suggestion, every time Lena had nudged her gently toward Ethan. Patterns emerged, and with them, resolve. By morning, Amara had made a decision. She would not confront them in anger. She would not expose them prematurely. She would not destroy her own credibility by acting emotionally. No, she would gather proof. She would document everything. She would let them continue believing they were in control. And when she finally moved, there would be no escape. Amara closed her eyes, the weight of betrayal settling into something solid and unyielding. The girl who trusted too easily was gone. What remained was a woman who understood one brutal truth. Some people don't deserve forgiveness. They deserve consequences. And she was just getting started. Amara waited. That was the hardest part. Not screaming, not accusing, not letting the betrayal leak into her voice or her eyes. She played the role of the newlywed with unsettling precision. She laughed at Ethan's jokes, discussed honeymoon plans, and allowed Lena to move freely through her life like nothing had changed. But beneath the surface, Amara was moving. Quietly, methodically. 3 days after the wedding, she sat in the back seat of her car outside a discreet office complex on the outskirts of Ikoyi. The sign on the door was deliberately bland. Hale and Company. Risk Consulting. No flashing lights. No promises. Just anonymity. Victor Hale was not what she expected. He wasn't flashy or intimidating. He was calm, mid-40s, eyes sharp but patient, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. When Amara finished telling him everything, leaving nothing out, including the recording, he didn't gasp or shake his head. He nodded once. "This isn't a love triangle," he said quietly. "This is a coordinated financial crime." Those words steadied her. Victor worked fast. Within days, he began unraveling Ethan's carefully constructed persona. The architect credentials? Forged. The portfolio? Stolen from legitimate firms across Europe and Asia. The LinkedIn endorsements? Bought or generated through shell accounts. Ethan Moore did not exist. At least, not in the way he claimed. Victor traced Ethan's real identity through old travel records, IP addresses, and financial footprints Ethan had been careless enough to leave behind. The man Amara married had multiple aliases, a history of online fraud stretching back nearly a decade, and open investigations in at least 2 countries. Then came the money trail. Victor uncovered secret loans taken out under fake business names, loans that had been quietly linked to accounts Lena had access to. There were forged partnership documents bearing Charles Kingsley's company logo, drafts of contracts that hadn't yet been executed but were dangerously close. Ethan wasn't just planning to steal. He was planning to embed himself. He wanted legitimacy, Victor explained during one of their late-night briefings. Marriage gave him credibility. You gave him proximity. Your father's company was the end game. Amara listened, jaw clenched, fingers gripping the edge of the table. "And Lena?" she asked softly. Victor didn't answer immediately. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside were screenshots of messages. Lena and Ethan coordinating introductions, timelines, rehearsed conversations. There were voice notes Lena had sent Ethan, coaching him on how to behave around Amara, warning him when to pull back, when to push forward. There was even a spreadsheet. Projected access points. Amara's name appeared repeatedly. Her trust quantified. Her love measured in leverage. Amara closed her eyes briefly. The final blow came when Victor uncovered proof of identity theft. Documents Lena had helped Ethan forge using information she had access to simply by being Amara's best friend. Passport copies, signatures, old company memos. This wasn't passive involvement. Lena had been an architect too. Victor leaned back in his chair. You have enough to destroy them both. But timing is everything. Amara nodded slowly. I know. Amara chose the location carefully. The Kingsley family home. It was a place heavy with memory, Sunday lunches, graduation celebrations, quiet conversations that shaped futures. Lena had always felt safe there. Welcomed, protected, which made it the perfect place to end the illusion. Lena arrived that afternoon smiling, carrying pastries like she always did, greeting the staff by name. She didn't sense the shift in the air. She never did. They sat in the living room, sunlight spilling through tall windows. Tea cooled untouched on the table between them. You've been quiet lately, Lena said lightly. Marriage treating you okay? Amara studied her face, the familiar expressions, the practiced warmth. Yes, Amara replied. Sit. We need to talk. Something in her tone made Lena pause. Amara didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse. She reached for the tablet on the table and pressed play. The garden footage filled the screen. The kiss. The laughter. The word transaction. Lena froze. Her color drained instantly, eyes darting toward the door as if escape were possible. Amara, that's not, Lena began. Amara held up a hand. Then she slid the tablet aside and placed the folders on the table, one by one. Text messages, bank statements, forged documents, screenshots of voice notes. Lena's hands began to shake. You lied, Amara said calmly. And then you helped him plan how to destroy my family. Lena shook her head violently. No, you don't understand. I was trying to fix something. I never meant for it to go this far. You introduced a fraudster into my life, Amara replied. You coached him. You covered for him. You helped him steal from me. Silence swallowed the room. Lena broke. She slid off the couch and sank to the floor, sobs tearing out her chest. I was scared, she cried. You don't know what it's like to always feel one step away from nothing. Ethan said he'd die if the money wasn't paid. I didn't know how else to help him. Amara stood. She felt no satisfaction, no triumph, just an aching emptiness where love used to live. You could have come to me, Amara said quietly. You could have told me the truth. Lena looked up at her, mascara streaked, voice breaking. And be what I've always been, the poor friend who needs saving again. That hurt more than the betrayal. Amara nodded once. This ends now. Lena reached for her hand. Please, Amara. Amara stepped back. You stopped being my sister the moment you decided my life was collateral. She turned and walked out, leaving Lena sobbing on the marble floor of a house that would never welcome her again. Outside, Amara inhaled deeply. There was still more to do, and the final reckoning was approaching fast. Amara chose the battlefield carefully. Kingsley Consolidated's headquarters stood like a monument of steel and glass in the heart of the city, a place of contracts, power, and reputations built over decades. It was here that Ethan had dreamed of planting his flag. It was also where Amara would end him. She told Ethan they were attending a routine strategy meeting. Nothing unusual, just lawyers, executives, and a few senior managers. Ethan didn't hesitate. In fact, he looked pleased, confident that he was finally being welcomed fully into the inner circle. Lena was not invited. That, more than anything, unsettled Ethan. The boardroom was already full when they arrived. Charles Kingsley sat at the head of the table, expression unreadable. Beside him were two company lawyers, Victor Hale, and several unfamiliar faces, quiet men and women in conservative suits. Ethan sensed it then. The air was wrong. Before he could speak, Amara stood. Her voice was calm, steady, impossible to interrupt. "Before we begin," she said, "there are some matters that must be addressed." She nodded to Victor. The lights dimmed. Screens flickered on. Ethan's world unraveled in minutes. Documents filled the screen. Evidence of forged identities, fraudulent loan applications, fake architectural credentials, emails outlining schemes to access company funds. Audio recordings played. Messages appeared with timestamps and metadata that left no room for denial. Ethan stood abruptly. "This is a mistake." "It's not," one of the unfamiliar men said, flashing a badge. Law enforcement had been waiting. Ethan's voice cracked as the full weight of exposure slammed into him. He turned to Amara, eyes wide with disbelief and something like panic. "Amara, listen." She met his gaze, unmoved. "You married me under false pretenses," she said. "You conspired to defraud my family. And you underestimated me." The officers stepped forward. As they cuffed him, Ethan tried one last time. "Lena knew. She planned this too." Amara nodded once. "I know." That afternoon, Lena was brought in for questioning. The evidence was overwhelming. Messages, financial trails, recorded conversations. She wasn't charged as harshly as Ethan, but her role as a knowing accomplice was undeniable. The illusion of the loyal best friend shattered publicly, permanently. By the end of the day, Ethan Moore, the man, was gone. So was the lie he had built his life on. The court proceedings stretched on for months. Amara testified without theatrics. She spoke plainly, truthfully, refusing to embellish or soften what had happened. She did not seek pity. She sought closure. Ethan was convicted on multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and financial conspiracy. Sentenced to years behind bars, stripped of every illusion he had ever sold. Lena's punishment was quieter, but no less final. Her reputation collapsed. Friends distanced themselves. Opportunities dried up. The world she had fought so hard to escape closed its doors. Not because she was poor, but because she had betrayed trust. Amara never saw her again. She didn't need to. When it was over, Amara returned to her life. Not the one she had imagined, but the one she now chose to build. She annulled the marriage, reclaimed her name, took a more active role in her father's company, no longer as the sheltered heir, but as a woman who understood risk, loyalty, and power. She learned to trust again, but carefully. Some nights, the loss hit her unexpectedly. Not the husband, the sister, the years of shared laughter and whispered dreams. That grief stayed quiet and heavy, but it did not define her. Amara Kingsley emerged stronger, wiser, unafraid to stand alone. She had lost a marriage and a friendship that once felt like blood, but she had gained something far more enduring: clarity, self-respect, and complete control over her life and legacy. And that, she knew, was the only victory that mattered.